Hello everyone and welcome to the first, possibly of many, we'll see how it goes, of our podcast / video that we are going to call Research Party, which I don't know if Darren's still on board with the name. Are you still on board with the name?
I mean, let's take it for a spin and see what happens.
Great. And so if you haven't met us, you will in a sec. This is characteristic of our friendship. I'm going to
I now have F+7 in my head, however.
Which one?
Ain't no party like a research party.
Oh, great. Maybe we'll add that in as a little clip, me singing it, if we can get permission, which we probably can't. All right. So this is very characteristic of our friendship. I come up with lots of ideas of variable quality, and at some point Darren sifts through them and decides which, I'm not that happy about.
Yeah,
but it seems
and which of them most fit a song.
Yeah. Right, okay, so hello. Anyway, we should introduce ourselves. So in time-honoured fashion, we'll introduce each other. Why don't you start?
I mean...
You can introduce me.
You know how I love to have a template first before...
you want me to? Right, I'll go. It's fine. This is Darren Macy, currently Mr., but not for too much longer. Not because we're getting married, but because hopefully he'll finish his PhD shortly and become a doctor. And then who knows, Reverend, Professor.
That seems unlikely.
Well, anyway, so currently Mr. And he is a maths education expert, and in particular, very interestingly, statistics education, but with an eye to all of maths education. So it's not like he's only an expert in one thing. He kind of understands how stats education might or might not fit into the landscape of maths education generally, and also other subjects, which is pretty cool. Has been a teacher, as we both have, and you will absolutely see that in a minute. And also, like me, is really interested in research and practice and how we can use research to inform practice, but also the messy bits of that. It's not just like, here's a piece of research, plonk in the classroom, off we go. So I think one of the things that is important to say is we've been friends for years, so we will be mean to each other during this recording. And so this is, 10 years worth of working together, friending together, baggage, and in particular working together with a level of detail that means we know each other quite well. So part of the fun here is trying to predict what the other one might think, I think. So I've worked with Darren for 10 years, so just a little bit of background there. All right, over to you.
So this is the freshly minted Dr. Lucy Rycroft-Smith.
Hot off the press.
Slightly ahead of me in the PhD journey, mainly through working harder and more consistently over the period.
Mainly? What else is there?
I mean, entirely working harder and more consistently than me. I was, playing video games instead. However, Lucy is an expert, a specialist in knowledge brokering. That was the topic of her PhD. So the research, communication, research into practice vibe is strong in this one. Also, a polymath in many areas, including mathematics. Lucy is an artist, a communicator, a writer, an editor. Is there anything you can't do?
Yes.
Oh, stop.
I can't. Well, that's nice. What a lovely intro. I was taking you seriously then. We all know there's things I can't do. Understand physics.
Yeah. Aeroplanes, bridges, that kind of thing. Yeah,
and navigate. I'm absolutely terrible at navigate. I'm trying to get better. But anyway, so thank you. I feel like your introduction was much better than mine. Good job. Good job. Darren also does a lot of writing and speaking and is internationally renowned. That was a bit James Bond, wasn't it?
It was a little bit.
So we are getting together to talk to you about each episode a particular piece of maths education research, conceived broadly, that might be of differing sizes, but we're starting today with quite a meaty one. We're starting with a book, which was ambitious, wasn't it? Reading a book in the time we had.
Yeah.
And thinking about it in the time we had was definitely ambitious, but important, because if you're a maths teacher, how much time do you have compared to us? Actually, we're blessed somewhat, aren't we? Do you remember being a maths teacher and not having a single second to yourself?
Yes, I mean, I would likely not have read a book like this when I was a maths teacher, or I might have read it when I was supposed to be doing marking as a procrastination.
Surely not.
I could probably have fitted it in when I
I'm
was definitely
shocked by that.
supposed to be doing something else. But
Excellent.
yeah, how
Okay.
did you find?
We haven't even said what the book is yet. This is
No,
amazing.
we haven't. Let's keep
And
it
before we do,
tantalising.
I will just lay a little bit of an anticipatory trail. It's been very well received. One of the reasons that I wanted us to read this book, don't do it yet. Okay, good. Is
Not waving the book.
You better not. One of the reasons I wanted us to think about this book is I have heard amazing things. Like, this book has a following, and it's only been out just under 5 years. And people are telling me, you have to read this book. It's incredible. It's changed my life as a teacher. How often do we hear that?
I mean, yeah, not that often. And generally by evangelists for a particular way of doing it.
Well, there is that, and we'll get onto that. But
Yeah.
Rarely do we hear that about books that are grounded in research as well. So I think it's definitely worth talking about. Of course, we do so. So should we tell them what it is?
So I want to ask you two questions first before we go into that bit, because more general rather than specific to the book. So how did you find, I suspect I know the answer to this because you do this all the time, but how did you find like reading a book to spec? Because I don't think I really do. Like, that's not something I do when I read. Like, I find something that I think is going to be interesting to read, and I'll read it over a non-specific period of time as the mood takes me.
In between video games.
In between video games, sometimes during, and it was quite challenging at times, actually, just to go, like, I've got to read this book by a point and kind of plow through it, with no criticism on the quality of the content of the book. We'll talk about later, but
there's plenty of criticism on the quality of the book.
Well, quite, but it was just an interesting experience for me to have something quite this chunky to sit and read. And I've done bits of it with the PhD, but generally I've been, it's chapters in books rather than whole books that I've been looking at, or I've had a bunch of books to read without any particular time constraint on in that period. Possibly why I didn't finish my PhD at the same time as you.
I was thinking, because I do set myself, I mean, I'm hard on myself, but I set myself those sorts of targets. Quite often I give myself 1 or 2 days to read a book, which is ridiculous. So this actually felt like leisure. I'll be honest. I was doing it as a pleasure in between other tasks. I was like, I can read now.
Yeah.
Open book in sunshine. So I think having a deadline always is an issue, and reading to a deadline, maybe feels a bit weird, but equally, it's worth saying this was not a difficult book to read as well. It's I'll give it that, absolutely. It's easy to dip in and out of. It's very well structured. It's gentle on the reader. So I quite enjoyed it. I'll be honest. I did keep it in the toilet as well. So important. And I think this is my top tip, right, for people. I think we forget now that toilet time can be calm, pleasurable time. And I don't know what proportion of people are currently taking phones into the toilet, but I'll wager it's more than 50%. All right. I might wager even higher than that. I think sometimes we forget the pleasure. And, as a parent, I will say this, of like, close the door. Nobody's going to interrupt me for a bit. And toilet is the space, right? So I took it into the toilet for a bit, which was nice.
It's interesting, actually. I wonder, because I don't know if there's a Kindle version of this book. I mean, I've read a lot of books via Kindle on the toilet.
On the toilet, yeah.
And actually, this is not a bad one.
There's a movement here. Let's bring back toilet book time.
Agreed.
As a concept. Right?
Agreed.
It's great. You forget where you are. You can just like relax, let everything, do what it needs to do, and enjoy the book.
Yeah, and I think actually I cast my mind back to shameless plug time, like the statistics pedagogy.
Oh, I wondered how long it would take to talk about your book.
But it was specifically one of the design decisions we made when we were writing that book, is we wanted short chapters such that you could read a chapter on the toilet, essentially.
Did you actually say that when you were
genuinely had that discussion? Yeah.
Interesting.
So all of the chapters are short enough that you can read them in a limited time. I mean, I won't specify a time to spend on the toilet because that's very particular. But that was an actual design decision we made.
Yeah, for regulars, regular being the word. I am disabled in a number of ways, and so sometimes I need quite a lot of time on the toilet. So this is important to think about. When do you fit it in your day, right? That's a great question. We've kept them hanging on long enough, haven't we? Was there another question?
There was another observation, but I think we should do the title first, and then I'll tell you about it.
Let's do the reveal.
Yeah.
So
are we both going to wave our books at the camera, or on 3?
So this is Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics, grades K to 12, but don't let that put you off. It's not particularly American. Peter Liljedahl, who, if you don't know, I've got some trivia about Peter Liljedahl. I thought you'd like this.
Go for it.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
So
I'm holding on to my hands.
Great. I have met Peter Liljedahl. I think he's great.
Okay.
And I have had encounters with him in the past that suggested this might be a good book, even before I heard it elsewhere. So I think that's another thing. My trivia about Peter Liljedahl. Oh my God. Are you ready?
Go for it.
He was an Olympic canoeist in 1992 in Barcelona, competing for Sweden.
Excellent.
Is that one of the best bits of trivia I've ever brought you?
It's a great bit of trivia, and obviously my other love as well. So,
canoeing, right?
Yeah, well, kayaking, but yeah.
Yeah, isn't that good?
So exciting.
I know. So, we're going to talk about this book. We have a few questions that we're going to ask that we've pre-thought about. But one thing that I'd like to bring into this podcast, let's make it a regular feature, is what are you drinking? What are you thinking? Which is the general vibe, right? So, but also it's just an excuse for me to show you my mug, because I'm really excited about this. If you can't read that, it says it's actually a novella, Mum, and then there's this picture.
I'm assuming that is a direct quote from schoolwork you've been doing with your daughter.
Yeah, so we're recording this in the middle of GCSE season, boo, but I've been revising with my daughter, shout out to my amazing daughter, who's literally in an exam right now. And one of the things that made me cry with laughter was we were studying A Christmas Carol. Obviously, there was a lot of muppetry involved in that. And at one point, we were writing some exam answers together, and she said, I don't know how to start. And I said, here's my suggestion. In the novel, Dickens, and this is what she said to me, note the tone. It's actually a novella, Mum.
That is a very capitalised mum.
It's great, isn't it? Anyway, so this is the mug. Inside the mug, any guesses? You know me well. What am I drinking?
It's an excellent question. I mean, I'm thinking some kind of green tea or herbal tea type thing, just because I can see the colour of the slightly scummy liquid in the mug.
It's a type of tea. Well done. I think that was excellent guessing from you. It's chamomile tea. It's chamomile tea because I'm a little bit riled up about this.
Because it's a day of the week with a Y in it.
Right. But I am a bit riled up about this book. So what are you drinking? What are you thinking? I'm not calm about this. We'll get to it. Right. Okay. What are you drinking? What are you thinking?
I mean,
let's have a look at the mug.
I mean, it's the old faithful mug.
Yeah.
Classic Portsmouth Christmas mug, incidentally.
Except he doesn't call it Portsmouth, does he, guys? He doesn't call it Portsmouth. He calls it a word which really winds me up. Go on.
You dislike Pompey?
I really hate. I don't know why it's such a horrible word. Anyway, what's in the mug? What are you drinking?
Interesting. It is it is plain old, boring, bog standard, decaf, English breakfast tea with no milk.
That's not bog standard. That's an interesting choice. The no milk in particular, an interesting choice.
I mean,
why no milk?
It's intermittent fasting stuff, so I'm not eating till lunchtime. So milk is calories that I'm avoiding. So
guys, he's disciplined. We're applauding. I mean, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of what you're thinking, give me the general vibe that I'm to expect in this conversation.
I mean...
And before you say anything, Darren is generally very optimistic about things, is, as I like to say, the golden retriever in this relationship. And so I expect him to like this more than me. So he's probably going to like it more than me, just generally. Go on.
So here's the thing. I mean, kind of what you said is on brand. Like, I there is so much I want to like about this book, and yet I found it intensely frustrating for some very specific reasons, I think, that are also very on brand for me, and particularly the sort of PhD work that I've done. And
we'll see if I guess them. How interesting. All right, yeah. Great. Okay, so we've probably got about the same sorts of thoughts anyway.
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's sad because we might not have a big argument, and that's really why people will tune into this.
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's probably better we don't fall out in the first podcast record.
But then no one will come back and watch anymore.
Yeah, that's true. But maybe we can contrive some argument and get really angry about a trivial difference.
I mean, I've already got annoyed about Pompey, so it bodes well. Okay, so first thing that we said we were going to talk about is a thing you loved, and I'm glad I framed it this way because I think it would be easy to be super critical in our position as we are researchers, ex-teachers, people who know quite a lot about maths education. I think it's so easy to just be cynical and just crap on everyone else, isn't it? And you mentioned before that you'd written a book. I've written a book, right? It is a massive undertaking to write a book. It's huge. It's like years of your life. And, you know, for me, it was like 5 a.m. starts to find some time to actually write. It's a very, very big deal.
Yeah.
And the first thing we should say is this is a big book. There's a lot in it. And it must have taken a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a lot to love about it. And there clearly is from teachers, right? Because teachers are telling me that they think it's great. One of the things, well, we'll see if you know the thing I loved.
So I think you would have liked a lot of the tone of the book and the.
There's your first mistake.
Okay.
Didn't take long.
But well, I mean, I guess that like going into the specific, I think the way it characterizes knowledge, there was a particular sentence that I made a note of the quote for.
Go on then.
Because I feel like you could have written this.
All right, we'll see. What's the sentence?
So it says, and we'll see if you see why I think that you would have read this thing. So it says, and this is from the chapter on consolidation, it says, it positions knowledge as tentative, negotiable, and fallible rather than absolute, definitive, and accurate. I can 100% see you writing that sentence.
I agree with you. I do like that. However, and here's where you will learn the difference. The difference between Lucy and Darren, because I didn't just read the book, I did some homework. And I've listened to him talking about this book for hours. Right. And what's interesting about that is he talks about these two types of knowledge all the time. So he says there's basically two types of knowledge, tentative knowledge and absolute knowledge. And in the book, he talks about, you know, using that idea of tentative knowledge to invite collaboration specifically. And he's spoken about that many times as well. The problem is that when he talks about this more widely, he says we need to teach teachers how to use ways of speaking about knowledge that are tentative, because otherwise they're very certain. And this is what he said, and it really irritated me. Kids naturally talk to each other tentatively around knowledge, and we just need to encourage it. Now, let me tell you something about gender. Boys and men very rarely do that. As they get older, they do this more and more and more.
I don't.
Generally, this is a very stable result in evidence. Boys and men tend to say, this is true, I know this. And that's not that sweeping a generalization because there's evidence behind it, but also it's about the way they're encultured, that taking of risks, that being sure, that confidence is rewarded in society, but also in the microcosm that is education. And so women, again, this will be no shock to you, and girls are actually encouraged and rewarded for using hedging language, which is exactly what he suggests is important, and being tentative. And so he's just missed the point there, right? So, yeah, I agree. Most knowledge that we construct in the classroom should be done tentatively, certainly to start with, and we can move towards absoluteness in maths in cool ways, in some ways. But what are you missing here? Well, it's actually what's going on in the co-construction of knowledge that people are bringing from general societal norms. And guess what, guys? Spoiler, he barely talks about it in the book at all. I think
Right.
I don't know that there's a single mention of it. And so
we've
on the one hand, you're right. I'm not letting you say anything yet. On the one hand, you're right. Yes, I liked that part. But on the other, I feel like he twists it in a direction I don't like.
Yeah, no, I agree entirely with what you said. Like this is the, I said,
How certain are you? Really certain?
Really certain, yeah. I wanted to like this book because there's obviously so much thought and structure that's gone into the kind of big, like, ideas that he has around what to do and how to do it and the order it and all the testing things. And then that's framed entirely through this really sort of normative model of students, of teachers. There's no recognition of any sort of neurodiversity in there. Everything is like you say, he prods at various things that might be outside that norm.
Mm-hmm.
But I sort of felt like if you challenged people who are advocates of this book or the author on why didn't you talk about this problem or this issue or this thing that's outside that norm, they would go, oh well, look, I can point to a page where I said something about it, but the something is so superficial and is generally just like, but if you do the things harder, none of this will matter. And that was the vibe I kind of got throughout the whole book.
Totally agree.
Right. And so for all we've drifted very quickly from things we loved about the book into the criticism.
No, I will drag us back. Let's award some points. So the thing that Darren said I loved, did I love? I'm giving you half a point. You were correct. The way that you said it, yes. That thing, yes, I did love it. You can have half a point, right? The thing that I actually loved the most about this book, and I can't believe you didn't get this easy point. Oh, it's such an easy win. Drawings, layout, sketches, illustrations, let me tell you, by a practicing maths teacher who wasn't an illustrator, who did you know this story? This is incredible.
I didn't, no.
Once again, guys, women do research. Guys just turn up, expect to talk about stuff. Okay, so Laura Wheeler was interested in this approach, did a sketch note of it, really cool, put it on social media. Peter sees it and is like, I want you to illustrate the book. Laura's like, I can't, I'm not an illustrator, I don't know what I'm doing. And Peter's like, no, you do. You're going to illustrate this book. I want a maths teacher to illustrate this book. And how cool is that?
Yeah, that is very cool. To be fair, I did notice the illustrations. I thought you would appreciate the illustrations. I didn't want to throw that in as the thing that you love because it seemed maybe slightly reductive and obvious, and I was trying to go for something a bit more
because a huge part of my research, what I bring to maths education is layout matters, aesthetics matters, images matter, and it's not just the pictures, it's the way the whole book's laid out. And readers, I'll give you a glimpse. It is really, really thoughtfully done so that it doesn't overwhelm. And so the images, they're not all the time that necessarily that helpful, but it's not just the images. It's also the structure, the bullet points, the use of colour. Someone's paid attention to making this book in such a way that stuff's easy to find. That's what I care about.
Yeah, and the sort of the interesting decision around them, you just showed it on the page there, of like, having tables but having them as kind of pseudo handwritten, right, rather than something that you just like your eyes slide past. You actually look at it a lot more because of those designs.
Graphic design matters, guys. We seem to forget that in education. And also the handwritten nature tells us something about this again, there's the tentative knowledge, right? Despite what sometimes Peter Liljedahl does in this book, which winds me up no end, this is a book written by a person, and it's full of that person's thoughts about education. And the handwritten stuff gives us a clue about that. When we put things into print, when we reify them, when we make them textual, when we plop them in a book and say, give me some money and here's my ideas, one of the things we're saying is this knowledge is important, it's absolute. And when researchers do that and hand that knowledge off to teachers in the form of the book, they are really risking saying there's no comeback on this. You can't critique it. what I've said is the final word. Guess what? Because it's printed, you know. And this is one reason why, and I think this might wind some of you up. This is one reason why I scribble all over the book. I do not care.
This was the other thing.
My thoughts are getting in that book. And if you have a book after me, you're going to get my thoughts on it.
This was the other thing that, so beforehand I said there was one more thing that I was going to say. Like, so I did something that I never do with this book.
Darren Macy, did you write in this book?
Not only did I write in this, but actually I didn't write in the book. I highlighted with bright orange highlighter things that stood out to me. And I turned down pages to keep the page so I knew where the highlights were. So I could look
absolutely brought him over to the dark side, guys.
Now, Lucy knows this about me. Obviously, people listening to this, watching this will not. But I consider defacing books a form of abuse.
He does. He does. He tells me off.
I really struggle with it. My wife will turn down a corner of a book to hold the page rather than, like, I mean, I'll stick an envelope in as a bookmark. I don't have bookmarks, but like I'll put something in. She turns the page down. I hate it. It's like.
And now you're doing it.
And now I'm
prompted
doing it.
This change.
I know. And I mean, it was partly pragmatism of knowing that we were going to talk specifically about it. I guess I'm not normally someone that goes back and flicks back through things. Like if I go back to something, I'll read it again rather than try and find things. And so again, that thing of a different experience of reading to spec, but also reading because I knew I needed to talk about it. Suddenly, I need to write in the book. And I guess
you've just thrown your scruples out the window. No more principles for you.
But I guess to some extent, and there's another thing there of having chosen. I mean, if I print out a paper, a research paper, then I'll do this. And interestingly, it's sort of moved the book by doing this podcast about it. It's moved the book from being a book that I own to being a research paper, a piece of research to look through. And so it sort of sat slightly differently, which was not something I was expecting from this. But I definitely don't think of this as a book in the same way as I would think of other books that I have, because of how we're dealing with it, which I guess changes the experience of reading it as well, I think.
All right, so let's not get too bogged down in that. But the idea of sketching, doodling, handwriting, all of those things. Again, anyone who knows me will know I'm not a stranger to this. In one of the books that I wrote, I specifically had it so it was a workbook so people could write on it. And I think people, especially teachers, writing on books that are supposed to be repositories of knowledge is a particularly interesting thing. But let's not get into it too much, right? Because
so just to stick with the illustrations part there, and you mentioned it because things that I loved about this book.
Hold on, because I haven't predicted what those are. Would you like me to tell you?
I mean, can do, and then we'll go back to this bit if you like.
Okay. I have gone for his radical approach in rethinking everything. And I thought you would like this in particular because, again, you might not have heard this because he did say this on a podcast. I couldn't find it in the book, but it might be in the book. He says, we need to peel back education right to the studs, especially stripping away the paint of 170 years. And I thought, ooh, I bet Darren likes that.
Yeah. I think that's why I said I had a lot of frustration about this book, because I really like the basic attitude of it to mathematics education. Like philosophically, I'm completely on board with this. I tried, I didn't ever do this extreme kind of model of the thinking classroom where you're doing it all the time, but it's something that I tried to do, like a weekly lesson at least, that had this kind of different structure where people were working a bit more independently. There was like inquiry maths. There was a teacher that had a website that had these prompts that I used quite a lot, obviously Enrich and things as well. The Dan Mayer stuff on the little video prompts and I think Dan Mayer gets a mention in the book as well, or he's on the cover giving a quote. He's on the back cover giving a quote about how good it is. So
white guys love to tell other white guys their work is so good.
I mean, that feels like a section in this podcast.
Yeah, right.
In the future, with that specific jingle over the top of it.
Thanks very much.
But yeah, like so philosophically, the attitude to maths, doing maths education.
Do I get a point? Is my question.
You get a point, yeah. But it was also, that was the source of the same thing that made it so good was also the source of frustration for me, because it just felt like underdeveloped and too utopian in the presentation. Like, do the thing, like I said earlier, do the things hard enough and everything will be perfect. And we've been teachers, and I just don't see. I just don't see it. Like, I was reading it and I was thinking, I'm completely sold,
but
I just can't see this working in all classrooms in the way it's presented. Like, of course, there will be places it works, and of course, there'll be ways to make it work. But I wanted to know more about the difficulties and the challenges and how to get around them. And like this kind of counterpoint throughout, like, so things I loved about it, like, I like the fact there was a recognition throughout that systems were important. Like, the systematic way in which you embed these practices was important. The systematic, he talks about school systems and the ecosystem around, but in quite superficial terms, and doesn't really say, like, okay, these systems are so important for embedding and creating this new culture, but also you're trying to displace a culture which has 170 years of systems in place that create an inertia and channel it in a certain way. And that's really strong, and if you don't really dig into how you strip it back to the studs and do something new within the existing system, then it feels, like I say, utopian, and
that's the main tension with most books of this kind, right? We should say it's not like this is anything new.
Right.
You want to make a radical change, and I think you and I both think radical change is needed. This is not about just changing the wallpaper. Oh, look, we're continuing the metaphor. But there's such a tension there between, here's a toolkit for radical change, and then on the ground, this is going to be messy and difficult. And the problem here is not that he doesn't address that. He has FAQs at the end of every chapter which address specifically some of the main challenges. He's done this as well. Let's just say he spent 15 years going around schools. He still does now, helping people implement this. He knows what the challenges are on the ground, I suspect. Yeah. And he talks about them, but not in the way that feels authentic to me and that addresses limitations and nuance. It just feels like, exactly as you say, it's like, do it harder, or even worse, believe more.
Right.
Yikes. It's like when someone, as again, a person who's disabled, it's like when someone tells me to take a medication and I'm like, this medication isn't working. And they don't say, all right, let's talk about all the ways it isn't working, what it could be interacting with. Often they say, well, you just need to give it time.
Yeah.
Or, you just need to believe that it will work, which are all effects. But also, I want more nuance. I want more detail, and I want more honest acknowledgement. I think that's important, right? Honest acknowledgement. And his attitude of like, if you do it, it will work, is the thing that I think probably winds both of us up the most.
I think so. And like I said to you back at the start, when you talked about the following that this book's had, like, and people saying it's changed their lives, I think the problem, it's written in a very evangelistic way about this approach.
Yeah.
And I absolutely believe, like I say, I used elements of this approach, never in as structured and concrete way, but I absolutely believe that what he lays out here is beneficial. Some of the ideas are great. Probably most of the ideas are great, to be honest. Yeah. I absolutely believe there will be teachers that are in a situation or in a school culture, are in a have a classroom culture already, or a set of beliefs already that mean that they can absolutely make the best of this. But I also think that's probably really quite a small proportion of all teachers, because the systemic structures, the expectations of school leaders, the expectations of accountability. I could easily divert into a whole discussion about
let's not put you on that hobby horse, because you'll never get off galloping off into the distance.
But I can't, because of my PhD work, because of so much of the thinking and reading I've done is around the inertia of systems and the constraints on teacher agency. I think that's the big thing about this book. It ascribes a level of agency to teachers that I would love to be the case. I just don't think it is. Do you
think maybe it is in the context? We should say he's in the US and Canada. So Peter is at a Canadian university and is touring currently, as far as I know, the USA doing this work. So do we think maybe that makes a difference?
I think it makes a difference, but I think you always have the issue with this stuff, and I don't want to do a disservice to him and the work that he's doing. But
right, let's just say, how many researchers are out there in classrooms?
Right, and
putting their money where their mouth is.
It's not clear from the book as well how much research and how much time they spent in classrooms trying different things. I really like the thing where they sort of took a contrarian approach to changes that they picked up. So they go like, this is the problem. Like, this is the normal practice. So what's the complete opposite of that?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Okay, well, that doesn't quite work, but then you iterate towards something that doesn't. That designerly approach to, engineering sort of approach to things, again, chimes a lot with my own research ethics and instincts. But the problem is, okay, he's going into loads of schools. How are those schools selecting? Because there has to be a selection bias in there, or unless you really have a system level change imperative, like the state government has said you are going to go into every school, or you're going to go into all of these underperforming schools for the sake of argument, where you take out that selection bias from the individual institutions, or the selection bias from the Peter Liljedahl himself. Like, I don't know how he decides.
Then it becomes top down as well. And, one of the points of this, and he does talk about teacher agency, he does talk about teachers making their own choices. One of the points of this book is that teachers are in control of their own classrooms and shouldn't just accept the traditional, this is the way it's always done.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Great point. All right. Let's talk about things we hated. We already have.
We've done a little bit.
But can we really predict the exact things that people hated? Well, you've already said a lot of the things you've hated, but I'll tell you what I wrote down. I hope he hates, what are some things about this chapter that immediately feel correct?
Yes.
Because the first time I read that, I was mad. I nearly threw that book across the room. So we should just say, at the end of every chapter, there's a kind of, here's a thing to try. And then there's a sort of set of questions to reflect. And one of them is, what about this chapter immediately feels correct?
Yeah.
Did you have a visceral reaction to that, as I did?
So after the first chapter, I did not read any of those. My eyes skipped over that because it added nothing. It was one of those that it felt, it just beyond the philosophical thing of confirmation bias and that kind of thing. Like, it was very formulaic and it didn't really add anything. I
think it's okay to ask for the same reflection questions at the end of a chapter. Let's not go after that. For me, the word is correct. And it's also not having the equally important question, what didn't?
Right. Which I think goes back to what we've been saying already, right? What do you see as the obvious challenges of this? What's going to be most difficult in the implementation of this?
Which is
and
much
how
more
will
important.
you deal with it?
Yeah. Okay. And then I put one more thing. We'll see if you hated this or if you just literally didn't notice it, which I suspect now is the case. Page 102, what I've called the pseudograph. Did you notice the pseudograph?
Which one is that? Hang on.
The graph on page 1.
And okay, so you think I hated this?
Oh no. Oh, no points for me. Tell me about this.
Tell me your reasoning as to why you think I hated this.
Okay, because, well, you're a graph guy. Let's start there. And so
we should put this on the screen just so that people can see the graph in question.
Yeah, we should. So it's worth saying, you did highlight it. It's worth saying that I would expect you to notice and pay attention to graphs, right?
Yeah.
One of the things about this graph is, it kind of looks handwritten, fine, no problem. But there's no information on it other than 5 minutes. So it says it's claiming that thinking achieved is a function of when the task is given, and essentially high thinking happens if the teacher gives the class the task in the first 5 minutes, which, by the way, is perfectly uniform on the graph, which is why I'm calling this a pseudograph. It is not a graph of real data. It's an ideal graph. It's like when you get a napkin out and go, here's my boredom over time with this conversation, plonk, right, to annoy someone. That's the kind of graph this is. So then, apparently, according to this graph, if you do it in the first 5 minutes, you get high levels of thinking, and then after that, there's this negative gradient, right? Negative relationship with the amount of thinking students do. So I get what it's trying to illustrate, but also, Peter, you're a researcher. You have this data. I want the data. It's a pseudograph. Did that not annoy you?
No, because I mean, in a rare thing for me, I mean, I didn't particularly overthink it. Like I saw it.
I will take that criticism as intended.
I looked at it like I saw all of the graphs in this as illustrations, and exactly as you say, as sketches on a napkin. And I don't, as stats guy, as graph guy, I don't have a problem with that. Like I think if you can definitely critique it in ways of why is it a straight line? Why does it go to zero? Are we saying that there's a point where they just stop thinking and become like
that annoys
empty
me,
vessels?
Mathematician.
All of that stuff, absolutely valid criticism of those if you treat it as
right. I'm going to stop you there because
data.
I'm going to read you the caption on this. If the caption had said,
I know it says it's a function, and that's why I highlighted it.
Wait a minute. If the caption had said an illustration, right, or something like that, of the way that thinking and time might be related when you give the task, I have no problem with that. Here's the caption, guys. Thinking achieved as a function, note the word of when the task is given.
Yeah.
I think that is trying to tell me this is your data, Peter, that you have made a mathematical model of, which is clearly nonsense.
I mean, I agree, but I think it's actually just a bit of like putting my mathematician on the table kind of thing. It's And
we know what you mean when you say mathematician there, Darren.
I know.
So this is why I don't like it.
But I think that's,
my friend, is classic math washing.
Yeah, and I think that's a criticism of certainly a criticism of the titling, and I highlighted it as you noticed.
Okay.
Because of that. But I did see like all of the graphs that were drawn in this as illustrations of a point of communicating a shape rather than communicating data, and I'm okay with that.
I was not awarded any points there. Things you actually hated. I think we've kind of got to it. Go on.
Things I actually hated. I think we've covered most of them. I mean, I think the one thing I haven't said about, which we sort of touched on. So, and again, this comes down to my whole anti-neoliberalism in education shtick, that the theory of change that sort of arises through this book is very individualized. It's about the individual teacher in the individual classroom.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you're going to do this sort of thing, then it's sort of doomed to failure in an individualized way. Like maybe some teachers can maintain
I think that's too strong.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but it's going to have more chance of success, let's say, if it's about the departmental culture, and it's
all the whole area of province, which is where we get this top-down like tension.
Yeah.
If you're told to do this, it probably will have more chance of happening successfully. Interesting interaction with teacher agency there.
Maybe, yeah, and certainly if as a department you agree, you develop the plan to do it and you agree to do it, and then you're supporting each other in the implementation.
Good point.
This superficiality of the problems. One of the things I picked up, there was a really limited assessment of practical stuff, and again, I felt like it was one of these things where he does a nod to practical stuff, but doesn't actually investigate properly.
What do you mean by practical stuff?
So specifically, the example I have in mind is about the decentering the classroom.
Excuse me, that's not the word. The word is great.
Defronting the classroom, sorry.
Thank you very much.
So this idea that so in order to do this, you've got to move all the classroom furniture. And he says at one point you might have to remove some of the excess furniture from the classroom.
Or it's better to, yeah.
Right. And certainly thinking about the physical limitations of space in classrooms I taught in, with 30 students, even moving all the desks to the centre to get to the edge space, like it would have been tough.
You never done a role play in a maths lesson, Darren?
Have I never done a role play in a maths lesson?
By the way you're answering, I know the answer to that. Sometimes you've got to do theatre.
Sometimes you've got to do theatre.
I was that guy. I was that
Yeah,
teacher.
but yeah, so they sort of say like, okay, maybe you need to get rid of some of the classroom furniture, maybe you could put it in, and then there's this thing of like, there's a mention of, oh, of course you might be in a shared classroom, so, but it's relatively easy if you've got to
Just get all the kids to
just
move
get
it
all the kids to move it and move it
Right.
back, and like, okay, but how does that match with, well, in this small space, I've had to remove a bunch of the desks because they need the space to move around, and now another teacher's coming in, and we've got to get that, like, it just.
Or like me in my first 4 years of teaching, where I was itinerant, never had my own room. I mean, there's going to be times, as he says, when you get into the flow and you forget what you're doing and, oh, crap, the bell's gone. And suddenly,
I definitely did that a lot.
I mean, whoever's in that classroom after me, enemy for life. I mean, they're going to spit in your tea, aren't they, tomorrow?
Yeah, and the other thing, like, okay, I'm in 4 different classrooms, which means I need to put some vertical, non-permanent display things in every classroom I'm in, or take them with me, like these huge sheets of things for kids to work on and stick them up at the start. Like this, and this is the thing. So now you've got to think about, right, okay, the maths department need to be on board with this collectively, so that all the rooms can be set up right and so on. And again, he sort of acknowledges some of these difficulties, but the actual solutions are just kind of like, it'll be all right. You can figure it out.
Right. And I, with great love, and you're going to hear me say this 100 times on this podcast, that's a white guy thing, because you guys move through the world and all the doors are just open and you don't realize that someone opened that door for you.
Right.
And so quite often, logistics, that kind of, I've had a brilliant idea. It just must happen. Guess who's running around doing the logistics? Most of the time, it's people of color, it's women, it's those with caring responsibilities. Right. It's those people taking on the emotional labor of making your great idea happen. And so these white guy geniuses, gurus that run around the world going, I've had this brilliant idea, it's going to make a change. Guys, guess what? You need hundreds of people on board to implement that idea. Right. And then you get the credit for it.
And I think on that same note of maybe generalizing slightly about this sort of white guy focus.
I realise that
the element of care and the emotions of the students and how that changes from lesson to lesson, from day to day, time of day, what's going on in the students' lives and how that interacts with all of these great ideas about teaching, I don't think is well considered. And the idea of like, okay, great idea. You can, one of the things you do is you randomize the groupings from lesson to lesson. And okay, maybe that works. But okay, what happens when 2 of the people have fallen out at lunchtime and then they come into your classroom?
That's not the problem. Let me tell you exactly what I wrote about this. Are you ready?
I mean, there's lots more. I didn't even let you predict
what I hated about this because I suspect you knew. There's 2 main things here, and one is the certainty of language. We've talked about that. I'll get back to that in a minute. The second is this lack of attention to equity, inclusion, gender, other types of societal discrimination, right? This is the big flaw, which is just what you said. But let me talk about how this randomization issue is a problem, because he basically says, as you say in the book, there's a number of different ways that we could try assigning students to groups. There's a number of group sizes. We tried breaking it and then we put it back together again. So he comes up with 3 in a group size. Great. He comes up with only 1 marker per group and you pass it around. Great. He comes up with groups must be randomized. And again, the certainty of language around this is so stark. Like, this is the best way. And he says that students get used to it, and what happens is they stop trying to work with their friends, they stop saying, I don't want to work with Jimmy, whatever it is, because they just know it's going to be randomized, and this is like a major revelation. Here's the big problem. Do you know what percentage of young women and girls get sexually assaulted at school every single year? Let me tell you, the ones that actually report it, 59%.
Right.
So let that sink in. In your classroom of 25 to 30 students, 59% of girls and young women report that they'd faced some kind of sexual assault at school in the past year. What is it likely to be? Way higher than that. So you have got a bunch of young women in that classroom who are being asked, and probably what 1 per lesson? I don't know. You're the probability guy. At least 1 per lesson, being asked to work with that guy who just touched me up in the bus, on the bus, in the playground.
Right.
And framing it as, well, some kids just don't want to work together, but they'll get used to it, infuriates me.
Right.
And that was my rant. I could see that you were on board with it.
No, I'm 100% on board.
But
it's exactly what I thought. And it's what I was saying earlier, like this kind of very normative model of what students are and how they will work together. It takes so much attention away from students as individuals with experiences and how that actually interacts with this stuff.
And the systematization of bias.
Right.
You know, I keep coming back to this. Yes, the tentative and the hedging language and what knowledge is important, but the more glaring problem is your classroom is not an equitable space, right? It never was. Some people think it is, and guess what? They're the same people, Peter, as you, who have grown up presumably with some level of thinking that that's what the classroom is. It's a place where you belong, and great, and I don't want to take that away from anybody. But for a number of students in that classroom, even before you started making these changes, they weren't safe. They didn't feel good. Right. They don't belong. They have a number of disadvantages already. And just saying randomize everything, and also, you know, this idea of knowledge mobilization of like, well, someone will take the lead and it'll be fine. Someone will remember to do the notes and it'll be fine. In that classroom, guess who that was? This guy. And the number of times I've covered up in group work for other people not doing anything, for other people not doing any thinking, for other people who can't be bothered to write. Oh, your handwriting's so much nicer. Oh, you're just better at remembering things. Oh, you're so organised. Where is the attention to how you're perpetuating that, Peter? It is not in your book.
I mean, I don't feel the need to add anything to that.
Great.
I agree completely. And great. It's so frustrating.
And that is before, and that's pretty much just gender and other forms of discrimination. So race is going to be a huge issue here, other types of discrimination. Let me tell you as a disabled person, Peter, right. Peter, your solution to getting kids to think means getting them standing up. If that is borne out by your empirical research, I'm pleased for you. However, let me tell you as a person who has chronic pain, who has mobility issues, who needs to go to the toilet all the time, who has horrible periods due to endometriosis, if you tell me for this whole lesson I need to be standing up, I might just cry. I can't. And there's going to be loads of kids in that position. And so, again, it's not about saying, well, that undercuts everything in this book. It's about saying, where's the attention to it?
Right. How do you, and that's the frustration. Like the promise of the book is there, and then I don't care about the kids that thrive in this environment. I care about the ones that don't.
I care about all the kids.
You know what I mean, though. Like, it's easy to have a book that describes, if you do these things, the kids that will thrive in that environment will thrive. What about the ones that don't? What about the ones that can't for whatever reason? I want to know, like, because. Right, fine. I trust you. I trust you've done the research. I trust that all of this stuff works with, you know, let's say 95% of kids. Like, let's be really generous here. Like, okay.
Well, he's got the data. We'll ask him.
Right. So what about the 5%? What were they invisible to Peter, to the teachers within the classrooms?
Right.
Were they not there because the type of schools they went into were very specific?
Right. Is this a sampling issue? But it also isn't, because, you know, 20%
I mean, the sexual assault point that you, but right? that's not something that's...
You have got in your classroom people who are disabled, people who are young women, people who are not white,
neurodiverse,
people, right, neurodiverse kids, people who are LGBTQ plus. Yeah, you have those kids in your classroom. You absolutely do.
What are you doing for the kid that has a neurodiversity? They can't make eye contact, you know,
or the part of the book that really also wound me up, this idea of only giving verbal instructions.
Yeah.
You know, just think about how that interacts with students who have autism. Okay, right, come on, let's get on to... We've talked about things we loved. We've talked about things we hated. Phrase or word you enjoyed.
Yeah.
Actually, given that this is quite a sort of instrumental toolkit, practical book, it's beautifully written in places. There's places where I stopped to admire the writing.
Interesting. Yes, I mean, the one I shared earlier with the description of knowledge was one I enjoyed, but mainly because it made me think of, like, your writing.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
Which is a very soft and sappy thing to say.
I should say, this book isn't written in the kind of strong, colourful, vivid metaphor that I would write in. Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
No.
It's useful and accessibly written, which actually for me is kind of the only criteria if you're a teacher. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think yeah, there are bits and pieces through the book that I've highlighted. I don't think
if you had to pick one, I'm pinning you down. What's the one that you would say is your favourite word or phrase used in the book? And it doesn't just have to be beautiful. It can be because it's useful.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's one that I put in the like thinking about things that enlightened me, but actually it was really just about confirmation bias, and that's also why I really enjoyed it, which is this. And let's see if you can see why I really liked this one. So, well, there are two versions of this because I've got one in a box out. So I'll read both. If the room was super organized, we had more difficulty generating positive results. But when we were working in classrooms that were disorderly, but not overly so, we had better results. And then the box out for that is every time we worked in classrooms that were super organized, we had more difficulty generating thinking. And I thought my disorganized approach to teaching is entirely validated.
Oh, it was nothing to do with the language. You just wanted some kind of research backing for your approach
for my own failings and disorganization. Correct. Absolutely, yeah.
Well, but I did say a lot about you.
I did think it was a really interesting framing, like particularly in a world where you have this real push towards like the opposite of this book, where you have this kind of agenda in schools of like perfect behavior and like sit up straight and make eye contact. And
well, the big deal is the working in the book, right? When we're taught to work, pupils working, like the first three things I was looking for is like, is it neat? Can I read it? Date and title underlined.
Right.
And guess what? I think I always knew this stuff doesn't matter that much. It just doesn't.
Yes, I was horrific at maintaining those kind of rules.
Right, and also we should say, I'm going to share this fact about you. I hope it's okay. You don't feel great about your own handwriting.
No.
And that's partly, again, like a gender thing, guys, because guess what? Girls get rewarded for having beautiful handwriting and we get compliments about it all the time. And whoa, and we feel like we should. And actually, I meet a lot of men who are just like, I don't write anything. I'm embarrassed about my handwriting. And Darren, did you ever get marked down in maths for your handwriting?
I mean, when people can read my work, yes.
So I guess there's something interesting there, right? Okay, do you want to hear mine?
Yes.
Something, phrase or word that I enjoyed. So I don't know if Peter was just having a lovely evening when he wrote pages 105 to 112, right? Or I'm not going to cast aspersions, maybe he had a glass of wine, whatever it is. The writing has a deeper quality. And so he says two things in those pages that are like stunningly beautiful. Okay, one of them is unwinding the task through narrative. Absolutely gorgeous. And another is verbal unwrapping of the task.
Yeah.
There's something about the way Peter visualizes tasks and the way the teacher presents them to the class that is gorgeous. I wish he'd gone into that metaphor even more, but like that. Oh, unwrapping, unwinding, like it's a thing that I'm just going to like pull apart a little bit and then show you expecting you to love it. Like that conception of teacher, task, class is beautiful.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think, you said it already, but like the way things are expressed throughout this book, it's enjoyable to read, and
it's nice to read. It's not hard to read, right?
There was that you have reminded me of one other one.
Oh, okay.
In saying that I really liked, which again,
was it in the section that I just mentioned?
So in the assessment section, and I liked it because so it says so evaluation is a double-edged sword. When we evaluate students, they evaluate us for what we choose to evaluate. Tells our students what we value.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other stuff. And the thing I liked about that is like it has this real sense of like I looked into the void and the void stared back at me, kind of like it really evokes that. Your class. Well, I think the void is assessment. I mean, I have strong feelings about assessment, as you know, but
Okay, all right. We're going to wrap up very soon. So let's finish with something that enlightened you, and if you could ask the author anything, what enlightened you?
So, as I said, I think that thing I mentioned about the organised classrooms, it really clarified something for me around why I feel so strongly against this idea of like the perfectly organised school and the goal of the tension between organization as a goal for behavior management and organization as a goal for teaching, or something that impacts negatively on learning in some ways or positively, like there's a real philosophical divide there that suddenly becomes really stark as soon as you actually say out loud some element of disorder provokes creative thinking.
Do you know who I blame for this? Rudy Giuliani.
Broken windows.
Oh, yeah. Look how you got there so fast. Guys, this is how well we know each other. It's disgusting. But like the idea of broken window theory, which if you're not familiar, this was what, 2000s?
Around then, yeah.
Around that. So we got, I think it was in Freakonomics and a few other bits, like this idea came to the fore that like if you control the environment really, really closely, like if you notice a broken window, fix it. If you see something that's like on the floor, pick it up straight away. If you make an environment that looks sanitized, clean, orderly, then crime goes down. Like that
Everything flows from that.
Right. And then schools were like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's do the same. Kid, tuck your shirt in, blah, blah. And it's not like people weren't doing that before, but they really, really honed in on it. And this is where I think it comes from, right?
Yeah. And it's a model that is, in certain sectors, very, very popular. And if your goal of education is to coach people to pass exams, you can be very successful.
Again, let me speak as a woman, my friend. Compliant citizens.
Right. And so you can make an argument for it if in terms of its efficacy for specific goals, but I really enjoyed someone saying out loud effectively,
smash that window, Darren. You smash it with a pencil.
Right. Let the window be smashed, because actually, we're
doing maths over here.
Right. And also, like the way that the light is sparkling on that smashed glass might actually create something artistic. Like,
oh, I'm so proud of you.
I'm really trying to channel you here.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
This
right?
is what doing 90
out
days
of chaos comes unexpected things, and out of unexpected things comes creativity.
Right. And I really like that framing.
Part of being an artist for me. Like, I'll give you an example this morning. I went to do a piece of art. I went to do a picture, and I didn't have the tool I needed. And I was like, oh, for goodness sake. So I had to do something else. And it came out what I would call horribly, but actually massive experiment. And the thing that I produced looked different to anything I'd ever made before, just because I didn't have the thing and I couldn't be bothered to go and get the thing.
Right. And I think it's the getting away from all or nothing narratives of like, actually structure is good sometimes and chaos is good sometimes,
and we can all work in this mid space. Right.
And the trick is how you navigate and
focus on order doesn't necessarily have the effect you think. Okay, great. So let me talk about what enlightened me very quickly, and then we'll get the author. So I understand why teachers like this book now. That's my major takeaway but I'm enlightened because it's written well, it's easy to use. Most of what's said in there, as you said, as an idea makes sense. I'm like, good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. That's a good idea. I can't remember the last time I read a book like that, honestly, in maths education, where I said, well, this is a collection of great ideas and the person has thought about implementing them. But as we have said, it just doesn't go far enough. And the huge bit that's missing is an attention to equity and inclusion. And I honestly think, like, if that was there, this would be right up there with one of my favourite books. It's really good. And so I would recommend getting it. I think it's worth saying that. I don't know if how you feel, but I mean, it's relatively expensive. It's a good 25 quid, isn't it?
I think for me, it comes back to exactly the thing that you've done with some of your work on knowledge brokering and things like. I would 100% recommend people get this book, and I would 100% recommend they read it critically and write on it and read it, alongside other teachers in their department and talk about it together and decide what they want to implement as a group.
Yeah.
I think as a thing that the worry for me, the danger for me is if you read this and believe it as an individual teacher, it could make you feel really bad about your teaching if you can't do it.
I think that's true of almost all research, I will say. That. All right, last thing. If you could ask the author anything, what would it be?
I think we've kind of covered it already. I want to know the limitations. I want to know the pinch points and how you deal with them. Yeah. I also want, slightly covered by the fact that he does reference a few papers. I want to know more about his research methodology.
You do.
But that's just doing a PhD, I guess. I don't think it really matters.
Yeah, I think so.
in a book like this.
And mine's very similar. Like I want to ask him some tough questions about ableism that's baked in this book.
Right.
And maybe the gender stuff is important too, and general attending to care and inclusion. But I really want to sit down with him. And you know what? I think this guy's a great guy. I will say this. I've seen a lot of interviews with him. I've listened to him talk a lot, and I think his heart's in the right place. I think he just, like many of us, and this is true of me too, before it was a problem for me, I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Perfectly normal. So I want to have that conversation. Peter, if you're watching this, let's have a sit down. I would love to. And you can also tell me about being canoeing at the Olympics, which sounds incredible. Yeah. Well, you can tell Darren about it. All right. Thank you so much. I think that was a great discussion. So we talked about get the book. I think get the book. It's great. Yeah. It's really interesting. It's a lot of book.
It should be noticed that there is a follow-up, but which we haven't looked at, and I haven't read ahead of this. So I would be interested to know whether some of our criticisms actually are covered in
What a
this
great
follow-up
question.
book.
Maybe we'll make another video and we'll find out. All right. Thanks, guys. It's been great. We have had a research party.
Ain't no party like a research party, and a research party don't quit.
I mean, it does quit. You got to sleep. You got to eat. You got to do other things. I was going to say you got to go to the toilet, but guess what? What have we learned? You can do research on the toilet. Okay. Nice to see you all, everybody. Another video will be coming up soon. I would say like and subscribe, but if you say that, I mean, if I say that, I think my daughter might never speak to me.
I think you have to go hit the bell.
Where are you pointing?
Or maybe it's down there.
Okay, all right. We'll see you again soon. Bye.